Good evening, everyone. Good evening from India. I hope it's a great weekend for you till now, and I really hope that it's just going to get better from here. So, for those of you who don't know me, I am Afif. I take care of design community management of ProApp, and today we are going to speak about a very common problem that every designer goes through. So, how many of you designers here have created a masterful design but saw it get ruined by development right there in front of your eyes? I mean, that's gotta hurt, right? So the problem is that the design does break post development majorly due to the handoff process. You need to hand off the right elements with, we have several tools, fonts, mobile responsiveness, one of the most important parts. And yeah, I think those are the things that are very crucial elements, very summary of all the things that you would need. And I think the best person to speak about that is the one that we have with here today. Anirudh is a product designer with more than 7 years of experience in the core design field, and along with a strong technical background, he is a very user-centered and mobile-first approach. He has that approach. So he is also a design system enthusiast. So making scalable design to manage complex products, and passionate about making reusable components. So yeah, I think enough said about Anirudh by me. I think it's time for Anirudh to take it up himself. So Anirudh, it's over to you.
Hey FM, thank you so much for the warm welcome and the introduction. Hey everybody, welcome to this session. So the way I'm gonna host this session is that I'm gonna just quickly give an introduction, which is very well given by FM itself. So first of all, welcome to this session. I'm gonna just quickly tell you whatever we're gonna do in throughout the session, and let's just try to keep it very interactive. Okay. So at any given moment, if you guys feel like you have some questions and not able to understand the session, just put all your questions in the chat box, and the Afif will help us, curate all the questions and take it up. We're also gonna have a 30 minutes Q&A session at the end of the workshop that we're gonna do right now, and we're gonna again come back to you and ask you a question. So feel free to stop us or hold at any given moment and just bring into the chat box. So hoping to have a very interactive session over here. So I'm just gonna quickly share my screen. So let me know when you guys can see my screen. Awesome. Great. So here's this workshop hosted by ProApp, man. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share my knowledge across with global students over here across India and so many other cities. So I'm more than happy to take this workshop on your behalf. So the topic for today's workshop is a guide to smooth design development hands-on, right? So before getting started, everybody who is seeing me for the first time, hearing me for the very first time, or attending my workshop for the very first time, I'm gonna quickly give my introduction, most of which was very awesomely covered by Afif. So I'm gonna just quickly say, so I'm a product designer. Right now I'm a lead product designer at Rebel Foods, which is India's first cloud kitchen maker. I look into the B2B side of it, B2C side of it, where we design and develop products for consumer-facing audiences. So I have more than 7.5 years of core design experience. Some of the important point is I'm a self-taught developer turned into a designer. So that's why he said that I have a strong technical background, because I have been a full-stack developer a couple of years. And that is what helped me eventually differentiate and segregate myself from existing designer, because I had a brownie points of being technically sound. So I am more keen and interested towards making design system, as already told. And the most important part the journey that I started was, I used to go back to LinkedIn and Twitter and being a lot of people saying that, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? And a lot of people who knows me already knows this point, saying that, I'm just trying to be the mentor who I wanted few years back. That's why I'm very hyperactive on LinkedIn, on Twitter and Instagram. So every time people have any question around design thing, they would just ping me up and I'll quickly revert back to them. So that's what I love to do. And going forward, just a summary, I have more than 7.5 years of core design experience. I have designed more than 8 Android iOS, so I am having more than 5 million Android and iOS downloads. I have designed more than 20 websites that has, more than 2 million active monthly users. So I have worked with design agencies like Lollipop and a few other things. I have worked with financial sector, HDFC, Kotak Mahindra Bank, Yes Bank. Right now I'm looking forward. I'm working at Rebel Foods, and going forward, this is something that I have recently achieved while I started teaching online. So back in 2021, I was among the top 10 design mentors in India. Right in 2022 January, I was among top 1% global mentor. And that is because I started sharing sharing all my knowledge to all the people who wants to learn things, right? So I take a lot of workshops, and from this workshop, roadmap to user experience design and usability is something that is very well known in the market right now. So if you don't know yet, that's perfectly fine, because I'm very bad at marketing. So I also started a YouTube channel to reach out to a lot of larger audience. So that was the love given by the people, 21,000 views in just 28 days. So thank you so much for that. So getting back to the session, so far, if you have any questions, just Afif, let me know if I can continue. Great, great. So I'm gonna continue. So the topic for today is design. The topic for today is we're gonna understand how to smoothly hand over your design to a developer. The problem statement that we're gonna try to solve and address today is that every time you develop something, you need to make sure that the same thing goes to the developers and same thing comes out as an output in Android, iOS, or your web application, whatever you're working on. But what happens a lot of time between the transition, between the communications gap, a lot of things got missed out. Okay, so I'm gonna cover everything and all the every example with some specific example. I'm gonna give you some real life scenarios also that I've worked with. I'm gonna explain you everything. So things that we're gonna cover today is the basics of development terminologies. So I have identified this issue that a lot of people not necessarily come from the technical background or design background, right? They are from like versatile and a lot of other backgrounds, right? So I'm gonna quickly give a heads up on what are the basic terminologies that you need to know, or you might get to notice when you're working in a product-based company. Dealing with design tech limitation. A lot of time you wanna make your solution so vast, so difficult, so differentiate. So in pursuit of making a solution differentiating from a lot of other people, you forget the technical feasibility of that product. So just like Dribble is known for showing off all your skills, Behance is known for making sure that your designs are feasible and presentable. So on Dribble, you will see there's a lot of designs that are not possible in terms of development or in terms of feasibility, right? So we're gonna discuss few of them. We're gonna talk about the design development handoff process. Like here's my design, I'm done with it. So here's a developer, I'm gonna give it. So I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna explain right away. Asset handover. So when I talk about assets, this is going to be how do I give all my images icon to a web developer, to an Android developer, or an iOS developer. So what do we have common between all this platform, and what is the differentiating factor among all these platforms? So let's go ahead. The last thing over here I'm going to cover is design assets optimization. A lot of time nobody will likely tell it on your face, but the size of your images, the size of your assets that you give to the developer has a larger impact on the actual performance of your application, right? If you give a huge asset, it's going to take good amount of loading time. And any given application already has so many APIs calls, so many DB calls, so many assets downloading on the go, so many network calls being made, which we're going to cover right away. So that's why I'm going to tell you how to optimize and what would be the best specific solution for giving your assets on website, Android versus iOS. So let's go ahead and talk about some basic terminologies. So far, if you guys have any question, please feel free to revert back. I'm going to quickly check again and again. So moving forward, here are few keywords, right? Like couple of it, there are like hundreds of other keywords, but these are some of the keywords that you're gonna use in your day-to-day life. So rather than just listing it out, I'm gonna quickly go ahead and explain you each in details very quickly. If you guys have any questions, if something is something that you can't understand, let me know. I'm gonna revise it for quickly. So these are the terminologies that you have in communication with your developers and in a product-based or a service-based company. So you get to encounter these keywords. So don't ever hesitate about what is this, what is that. I'm going to explain everything right now. So cool. So first one is nothing but a CTA. So the full form of a CTA is call to action or click to action. This is nothing but your actual buttons that you use on your screens. So every time you see a screen, there's a primary button, there's a secondary button, there's a tertiary button. You might have a button with everything filled, you might have a button with just outline, or you might have a button with just underlined text. So CTAs are your button. So your developer will be like, that CTA is not working, means your button is not working, or the asset or the style guide for CTA is missing, means everything that you have around your buttons are missing. Web icon. So basically, if you go ahead and see your website, basically on the top of it, there's a small icon over here, right? Web icon. So this represents the branding value of your product. So this is something that your developer also wants from you while you're designing your website. So that is nothing but a small icon into 16 into 16 pixels. You can also make a larger icon, let's say 2040 into 2040, and then you can go back to the online, Google it out, online web icon conversion, and everything will be converted for you 16 to 16, 32 into 32, 64 into 64 as per the sizes. So you don't have to do it manually. But every time your designer or your developer asks for a web icon, just understand that it's just your branding logo in a very smaller size. Going forward, CX, people will talk about, let's just evaluate the overall CX of your product that you've recently designed. So CX is nothing but an end-to-end customer experience. So you're going to make sure that everything that you give to the developer, and while you're trying to review it, you try the end-to-end customer journey, end-to-end customer experience. Sprints. So if any given point, if you think something is overwhelming and you want me to explain in more details, feel free to do that. Sprints. So sprints are basically a way in which developers work. So say for example, you give them a feature or a product. So developer will divide the complete implementation in number of weeks. So say a sprint of 1 week, sprint of 2 weeks. So sprints are nothing but a duration in which your feature is going to be implemented. We also have design sprint given, the framework is given by Google, but for developer, every time they say, you ask, where is my product, where is my feature? So if they tell you it's in current sprint, so don't mess up saying that, hey, what are you saying, it's running or what? Exactly, it means that right now we are in a process of developing it and we'll be delivering at the end of the sprint. So mostly it's 1 week, 2 week, or 3 week. So every time your developer talks about sprint, do ask them like, what's the duration of a sprint in a company and organization. 404 is just an error code, just like all the other 501, 401, 404, 800, 891. So what happens over here is that if your developer comes and tell you, hey, can you give me a 404 error code? All he means to say that, the page not found is an actual transition of 404. So similarly, if you ever listen to any numbers from your developer saying that, can you give me a design for XYZ code and error code, go ahead and tell them, can you explain me the concept? Because we are not that technically savage, right? So you have to tell them, tell me the concept. So for an example, I gave you 404. So 404 is nothing but something that you're looking for is not found. So we say, right, image not found, reverse not found, go back to home page, go back to some other pages. That's what it's all about. We have CSS, it's just a styling guideline still that developer use for developing your actual website and your product. So all the style principal elements that you give, developer does it in CSS coding, and they have all the heading, padding, margin, global variable, local variables. Server is nothing but a cloud structure where your actual design has been uploaded. Your first fold and your second fold, your BTF and ATF, always talks about the viewport. For example, if I'm over here right now, the only thing I can see is still the speaker node, right? So this is my ATF, this is my about the fold, this is my first fold. So once I start scrolling, everything that is hidden below the fold is my BTF or my second fold, right? So ATF and BTF is used in web terminologies, first fold and second fold is used in your app terminologies. So every time you say, hey, what's your first fold all about? Means your product, your developer wants to know the first screen that the users are going to see. If they tell you what's your second fold, means they want to say, once I scroll my application, what's the second thing that I'm going to see? So going forward, there is something called, they would come up and tell you, hey, the sitemap is not clear. What is this my sitemap for this website or a product? So sitemap is just as simple as your information architecture. The terminology is different for both of this domain. Wireframes, I don't want to talk about it. We all know as a designer, it's just an early stage ideation concept for your actual solution. So developer might come in and say, is the wires ready? They would not even say wireframe. So don't have to confuse. You just say, yes, the wireframes are ready. Here's the thing. They would come and say, there's some bug in your application, so I won't be able to share it, which means there are some errors and issues through which your product can't run right now, so I can't show you. Front end is your UI person who does your front end work, means he develops all the UI for you, right? Backend is the person who does all the backend coding, the server, the optimization, making sure that the overall speed of the application is very good, running all the app optimization issues, reducing everything else, and making sure that the app and website is as fast as possible. So front end is the person who does the UI, backend is the person who does all the optimization. Bounce rate, so a developer might come and say, hey, this website or this ATF has a huge bounce rate. So bounce rate typically means that once you visit a website, you do nothing but you just go off, right? You come, you don't interact with the website, but you just go off. So that is called as bounce rate, right? You need to make sure that the messaging, the clear of the concept, the clearance of the next step that the user wants to do on your website has to be clear. Otherwise, I would just come, if it's very cluttered, I don't get my point, I come from Google or some other advertisement, I don't get my point, so I would just go back without scrolling, without clicking. So that will increase my bounce rate. The number of increase in your bounce rate is directly proportional to the SEO value of your product. If your bounce rate is high, Google will put it down in terms of search engine optimization. Then conversion is nothing but the amount of users that are coming on your page to the amount of users they are going inside your page and doing something on your website. So that's your conversion ratio is all about. Cool. Sure, I'll do that. Then there is something called build. Okay, so build is basically when you give your design to a developer, the developer will actually code it and they would come back and say, hey, the version 1 build is ready. So the moment they come up and say the version 1 build is ready, means your application or your design is completed and here is something that you can test and go ahead and talk about, right? So going forward, there is something called CMS. It's nothing but a content management system. So when you talk about content management system, there is a specifically different software that will pull out all the content in your website, in your application. So every time if you see some image is missing, some icon is missing, and you would say, hey, where is this? The developer would say it's a CMS issue. So when it's a CMS issue, he or she wants to communicate that on the content management system, the images are not properly uploaded. Maybe I'm not the right person, but the backend developer or the product manager is the right person. So those were the few important keywords that we need to have. There are a lot of other keywords also, but going forward, I'm going to quickly check who is well asked. Sure. I'm going to speak slowly. So going ahead and dealing with the second important part. So we just covered what are the limitations, what are the actual terminologies that you talk about with your developer, and going forward we're going to discuss about dealing with tech design limitations. Now to understand the concept, what happens is every time you want to design something, you have been given a problem statement, you go ahead and start the ideation, solution, wireframing. But what do? Yeah, there are, like I told you, there are a couple of other keywords. For example, servers. So servers are nothing but the actual data where you store on a cloud point. API is nothing but your application programming interface. So application programming interface means that there is a data that you want to pull up from your database on your interface, on your UI. So everything is done with the help of the API transactions over here. ATF means above the fold. The moment you visit a website over here, everything that you see on your first viewport is your ATF. The moment you start to scroll, that is your BTF. So we can say 100% of your width, 100% of your height at any given devices is your ATF. So I'm moving forward. So tech design limitation, let me tell you, every time you get a problem statement, you design some solution for it. But while you're designing the solution, you don't think about the technical feasibility as such. You always go ahead and design your solution, which is a good thing. You should not work in constraint, but making sure that the moment you design something or have an early stage ideation or sketches, you need to make sure to call your developer in that call or give an early stage walkthrough to your concepts so that you can have a discussion whether this is technically possible, feasible or not. So going forward, I'm going to share you one scenario. Every time you create a custom component for websites, maybe there's a drop down, maybe there's a button, maybe there's a selection tool, but you are like, hey, I'm a designer, I don't want to use same thing all over again. So let me create something new for my website. Cool. So what will happen is that you would end up designing something that won't be compatible with a lot of browsers, because every time you make a website, the website is being feeded and consumed via Firefox, via Google Chrome, via Opera Mini, via Safari, and not every of this search engine or every of this Chrome or the web browsers works in the same way. So that's why there is something called cross-browser compatibility issue. So there's a beautiful website called Can I Use? So I'm going to quickly give a glance of it. Can I Use is a website where you can go ahead and try to see that everything that you use, say for example, drop down, I'm gonna search, let's say calci function to use a calculator or so. So everything that you're gonna design for your components, you will go ahead and do this something called cross-browser compatibility issue. If you're not aware of it, you can go ahead and tell your developer that this is a component Do you think this will cause an issue in any of the browsers that we use and support? So over here, if you see the calculation function which is used for typography to calculate the automatic liquid fluid type scale is not being used, is not supported by some of the browsers, all the red things that you see. So what if some of your users on that browser, they would not see this optimized solution for the product that you're doing, right? So that's why it's always important to understand something like cross-browser compatibility issue. So make sure you have a sync up with your developer. If you're smart enough, you can go and directly check on caniuse.com. Going forward, scenario number 2. This is with respect to the app side. So let's say there's a problem statement where we would want to design an application where we would allow all the Kirana store people to just convert their physically written notes into an application directly via a product that we are designing, and then going forward all the transaction can be stored physically digitally into a product. So let's say you as a UX designer, you are very clear about the problem statement and you are like, hey, let's just go ahead and create an application where the user will directly scan the page and everything would be converted from the reading image to the text and everything would be stored digitally. User can edit or update directly, and going forward user can also add content directly. Fair enough, a simple solution. But what happens over here is that if you're not aware about the technical design feasibilities at this very moment or tech design limitation at this very moment, every time you scan something via mobile, there is a concept called OCR, optical character recognition, right? So there is something called OCR, which is nothing but optical character recognition. So this is something that you scan something and all your images would be converted into digital text. So if you have a good understanding of technical things, you would understand that even Google is not able to have an accuracy above 95 to 96 while doing that. And if you try to build the complete algorithm from the scratch to understand the images and pick up the words, because handwriting of Kirana people, the mental model, people would not be educated, right? They would randomly put in some languages to make sure to have an accurate conversion of the image into a text format. It's going to take a huge bandwidth on the developer and the company, and you're not even sure whether that design is technically feasible or not. So before you decide that this is the solution that I want to do, don't start designing the solution. Go ahead and discuss with your developer, right? Awesome. Going forward, tech design. This was a critical example of a tech design limitation. So how do we deal with design tech limitations? Every time you get a problem statement, try to do whatever the steps that you want to do to solve the problem statement. Research, understanding, stakeholders questionnaire, UDC, double diamond, whatever you want to do it. But when you come up with early stage ideation or sketches of the solution, sit back and call your developer and have a collaborative talk. Because design is not one man's job, right? It's a collaborative talk. So an entire team is responsible to deliver the best optimal solution to the end users. So that's why you need to make sure that you sit with your developer and discuss your solution, and then he or she might tell you that this is not possible, that is not possible due to XYZ reason, and then let's just talk about it. So then maybe in the earliest, and then maybe in the early stage of your ideation, you would directly change the solution. Going forward, now this is the point. Let us say you got the problem statement, you have done the complete solutioning, you made all the screens in Figma or Zeppelin, you make complete screen in XD or say for example Sketch or whatever design tool that you use, which is compatible with the Handoff tool. So the Handoff tool that I use right now in my organization is Zeppelin. So I'm going to talk about that also. So the moment you think everything is done, you will go back to the stakeholder, present the entire design, saying that, sir, this was your problem statement, this is my design, it is verified by my design lead, verified by product manager, verified by all the other people. So I'm going to here to take a sign off from you. So once the stakeholders or the business head tells you that this is good to go ahead and give it back to the developer. So right from that moment, your hands-off things start. The things that you need to do, the tricks that you need to perform, the tasks that you need to do to give this design properly to your developer so that there is no communication gap and your solution that you have designed is accurately developed. So we're gonna see what are those things, okay? So moving forward, I like to call it as the essential. Even before starting to give your design to your developer, first thing that you need to do is a design walkthrough. Make sure, is it Figma, is it Adobe XD, or it is Sketch, whatever it is, call your developer and the entire development team. So I like to call it as a design tech workshop where I call the entire design team, entire development team, and some tech product managers ahead and I then call them and sit back together into a call. If it's not a physical space, virtually we sit back, and then I give an end-to-end flow walkthrough. So this is the problem statement. This is screen number one. If you click over here, I would go there. I would have all the arrow down written. I would write all the text, and I will say from here you would go there. So what I'm giving is I'm giving a bird eye view of the entire product or the feature. If it's a huge product, if it's a huge screens, I'm going to distribute into multiple flows. But let's say it's just a small screen, small flow of 5 to 10 screens. I'm going to call back and discuss about them. So this is something like this. If you click over here, they would go there. You need to do validation over here. You need to go there. This is the error and the fallback screen. This is the happy flow. This is the sad flow. This is the negative flow. So once that is done and your developer is like, okay, buddy, I understand the entire app that you have designed, so I can take it forward. So don't do that. Even now, don't give them the entire product in their hands. Do something called working prototypes. Make sure that you design an entire prototype of your product end to end, right from clicking on a button to an error screen, end to end. Maybe you have multiple flows, the happy flow, where user comes on the app, logs in, does the transaction, goes happily. Maybe a negative scenario where user comes, does the transaction is failed, and you show the error messages and the way you recover users from the error messages. So that's what you can show, right? So that is what you need to make sure that you give end-to-end prototype, because there's happened a lot of times that there's a communication gap. A developer might be working off a lot of multi other products, but what say you haven't given the working prototype, they will come back to you saying, hey, where does this go when you click over here? Where does that go when you click over there? And there would be a lot of to and fro while you're trying to develop. You might be busy with some other solution, you might be busy with some other UX deliverables, and you might be like, okay, so I can't give you time today, which happens with me a lot of time because the calendar is always occupied with solutioning. So you might be like, let me connect tomorrow or day after tomorrow. So what is that happening is increasing the dependency on you, right? You're waiting, the developers are waiting for you to go ahead and understand the flow. So yeah, that's what. And then what will happen is, going forward, you will give a complete working prototype, and if the person comes to me, hey, I have a question with respect to this flow or this button, tell them, buddy, I have given you the entire prototype, just go and use the complete prototype, show all the interaction possible, and even still if you have any question, then you come back. So that's step number 2. Step number 3 is actual Zeppelin or Figma VD. VD is nothing but the visual design document or the visual references for your developer to understand, which we also say is that inspecting the element, knowing the visual document, knowing the visual principle. Okay, the size of this heading is 16 pixels, the size of the point is that much, the color of this button is yellow, the hex for that color is this much. So everything that you designed in a digital tool, you need to give all the property to the developer. And how do we do that? Couple of company and organization uses Figma, but I've used it for a couple of years, and I found out that scalability becomes an issue while you want to develop and when you want to give your hands off to Figma to your developer. Every time you want to change something, you would change, and you would never have a track of why are we changing it, the reason that we did, and developer will be like, I don't know when you change it from Figma, right? So the transparency and communication gaps increases as soon as the product is increasing day by day. So that's why Zeppelin is an industry first choice for giving all the designs to your developer, and that's what we're gonna use. So going forward, I hope we all are clear about the essential. These are the 3 important steps. I'm going to discuss step number 3 in details. So far, any question, guys? A quick yes, no in the chat box, anything like yes, you got, guys, good to go ahead. A quick yes, no. Anyone? All good so far? Awesome. So if you guys still have any question, do let me know. I can stop and take that question quickly. So going forward, let's just move ahead. Thank you so much. So moving ahead, we designed the solution. A quick recap: we did the design walkthrough, we did the prototype. Now we need to give the design to the developer. And how do we do that? We do that with the help of Zeppelin. So going forward, I'm going to show the entire step-by-step approach for creating and giving your design to the developer. Step number 1, there's a tool called Zeppelin. Go ahead and create a project over there, right? Yeah, sure. Okay, so I think I'm going to quickly give that to you. So scenario number 1 is a cross-browser compatibility issue. What happened a lot of time when you use something or design something, as a concept and you make sure that I want to go out of the grid and do something new, you never know that will this work in multiple engines. For example, everything that you design in website goes and users access it via Google Chrome, Firefox, Opera Mini, Safari, and thousands of other browsers, right? The browsers are going off the grid day by day. So how do you make sure that everything that you're designing in a custom level works for all the browsers, and some place the browser does not, cracks up? So that's why you need to make sure that you either go ahead and use a website called caniuse.com, where you can put the component name and then you can get to know which are the browsers supported. That's why I showed you that website where red things are the browser that you're currently the browser cannot support, and greens were the people who support it. One more example can be WebP. So giving more context over here, every time you give images to the developer, previously we used to give it with PNG and JPEG. So that used to have a huge size. If you compress the size, they would just reduce in terms of the resolution and the clarity. So that's why Google is like, hey there, we have WebP, we have a conversion algorithm. We're gonna do all the lossless conversion, and we're gonna give you the end result as your image.webp. So that's a new extension that Google came up with. But what happened is, as a designer, I was curious to use it. So I started converting all my images to WebP and I gave to my developer. But I did not know there's a cross-browser compatibility issue that Safari would never render .webp images. So once I would test my product in Safari, then I got to know, damn, Safari does not support it that capability movement. But since 4 to 5 months Safari has started, it was a year ago. So that's an example of cross-browser compatibility issue. You need to be aware of that. Right, Vishwadip? I hope you get it. Caniuse.com. Can I use? Just Google it out as can I use. Sure. So yeah, going forward quickly, that was scenario number 2 and 3. Then we decided all these 3 steps. Now, step number 1, go back to Zeppelin, create your account, be it on website or download the app. I like to download the app. You can see on my panel over here. Create a project. Now, you might be working on one of these projects for your organization, right? Either you're working on website, either you're working on iOS app, either you're working on Android. And why do I need to independently create a product with respect to the browser or the type of product that I'm making? We're gonna go ahead and discuss that in detail. But maybe if you're just making a website, just create a website product, name the product as, say, online transaction website, put all the screens over there. Maybe an iOS website or an Android website. So going forward, I will also tell you that while we design this, what are the complexity going forward. So the moment you are done creating your project, everything that you have designed, all your frame and everything that you do in development in your Figma or Zep and the other tools, just select all the frames, right click on the plugins. So if you are a designer, you might know that there is a plugin in Figma and other tools also, XD also and Sketch also. So once you click on your frames, all the frames, you right click and click on plugins, you click on Zeppelin. So this will launch the Zeppelin. So step number 1 was create a project. Step number 2 was select the frame that you want to upload. Means all the screen that you want to upload. Select everything and then click. So the moment you click on Zeppelin, this will come up. So right, so for example, there is a screen called Search 01 that I have selected. Now what I'm doing is I'm going to push it to the Zeppelin tool. So every time I select, there would be something like the Zeppelin export. So the moment you want to export it, what it will do is it will render all the vector images, it will render all the normal images, it will render all the text format, the style guide, and everything would be uploaded to the server. But before going that, they will ask you a beautiful question of which project do you need to upload this in. So that's why step number 1, you need to make sure that you create a project, and every project that you create on Zeppelin, and once you integrate your plugin in Figma, the Figma plugin and the Zeppelin plugin will work hand in hand. They will do all the versioning for you. So that's what they will say which project. So if you see, I have an example of Android project, I have an example of iOS project, I have an example of web project. So let's say you can name whatever you want. So you can select a project, because depending on what you're uploading, it can be an iOS image, it can be an Android, it can be a website, right? So make sure to upload website to your web project, Android and iOS app to their specific domain. Once you're done with that, once you're uploading, this is what you get. Okay, so you go to Zeppelin, everything that you've uploaded you will get to see over there, and you will get something called share the link. So the moment you copy paste it, you click over here. If you see there's a beautiful integration over here, you also see the Figma file. So if a developer has an issue, we can click directly over here, or maybe from here your prototype can also start, right? So you can copy the image and copy the URL and directly give to the developer. So the moment developer opens this URL, this is how the developer is going to see the actual screen. So let's say it's a demo screen that I've designed. So this is the entire thing that the product gets to see, the developer gets to see while they're trying to develop. So far, any questions that we have? Any questions? So far, any questions? I hope all cool. Great. So going forward, and I'll explain you the view over here. So what happens is, every time you give a Zeppelin link to the developer, there are few major components over here which I would want to bring to your notice. There is something called a link that you can again share to someone else. There is a Figma file over here. Then going forward, there are two important elements. So everybody who knows design system, if your file creates reusable component, that will show over here. Right now it's a 0 component. Then there is an assets. Everything that you want to give to a developer, your images, your icon, your assets, everything will come over here, right? Cool, Shubham. So how does that look like? If I click on assets, this is something like will show, right? So here is the option over here. So they would show that you have exported 3 PNG images, X1, X2, X3, which is nothing but the type of life cycle that the Android has. They want it into like smaller images, larger images, and larger images. Then going forward, you have also given the WebP format, which is directly create. And going forward, you also have an SVG icon over here. So people can directly, the developer, once the developer clicks on this image over here, the white image that you see over here. So the moment they click, this is what they're gonna get. So this is your image by 94 by 64, and these are the assets. So they can directly download the asset and put in their project, like within a click, right? They don't have to worry about come back to you, hey, can you give me this, something like this. So previously back in 2016, we used to share a zip or a RAR folder that these are all the images, take it from, download it from Google Drive or something else. But right now we have Zeppelin. So that's what we do right now. So yeah. So going forward, also giving an example of how does this component work. So if you see there is no usable component, so the moment you have a reusable component, this is something that will look like. So let's say you have one reusable component, you can connect your storybook with it. So storybook is basically a place where you upload all your developed components. Figma is a place where you put all your design components, vector components. So if you connect your storybook to your actual Zeppelin file, the moment you share this file, everything will be in sync up, and developer can see, okay, this screen has 5 components. 3 of this component is already developed in storybook. So I don't want to do it from scratch. I'm just gonna make sure that I reuse the overall component. So that's how design system work. Maybe if you're going forward, you want to know more about design system, you can do that. So let's go ahead and let me give you an independent view of how does it look in independent projects. So the moment you give it in your website, everything that you see over here would be in pixels. Like you see, there's X pixels, there is with pixels, there is something called pixels over here. So the moment you create everything in website, the project is a website, everything that you give would be in pixels. So let's say I've selected one typography element, a heading. So heading is in pixel, the colors are in your hex codes, right? So something like this. Going forward, you will also have a CSS file. Like I told you, the CSS, developers use it for development and maintaining the style guide. Just like we maintain a style guide in our Figma right now, they maintain the style guide in CSS, cascaded styling shape. So going forward, if you see, they will get the code, they can copy paste. If they click on a button, they'll give the entire code for this button. They will click and copy paste directly. Going forward, if you talk about Android, the major difference over here is that the notations that we use, right? Pixels to point to XT to XP to XPPX, all the other naming convention that we use is automatically done by the tool called Zeppelin. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to create a product and do everything in points or do everything in SP or do everything in EP. Everything will be taken care by Zeppelin itself. So that's why if you see right now, when this is an Android project, everything is in DP, density pixel, right? And the text in Android is in SP, the smaller pixels over here, right? So that's why it is important that you select the important projects when you're uploading, because once you go over there and try to upload something like this, you will have to make sure that the conversion and the tools units that we use while developing has to be different, which is going to be pixels for your Android app and something like this DP and SP for your Android application. So going forward, let's just see how does it work for iOS. So let's just see and observe. In iOS, everything is in point. So if you see the naming convention that we use over here is nothing but the point. So we don't use pixel, we don't use SP, we don't use DP, we don't use DPI, right? So there are different naming conventions for different platform. Even if you see over here, the typography that I've used, it's in point. So point is the unit for measuring typography in your iOS guidelines, and SP is something that is used in Android, and pixel is something that is used in websites. So on a larger note, you don't have to remember any of it. You don't have to design for anything. You don't have to know what is DP, SP or such. Say for example, the moment if I click on any of the artboard, let's say I take a single artboard over here and I start designing something. Let's say I put a text over here. At the end of the day, if you see, this text is at the end of the day going to be in pixel. So if I go over here quickly, and if I see this, everything over here is going to be in pixel. But what will happen is the moment I click over here and click on Zeppelin, if I right click over here, I click on plugin, I click on Zeppelin. Once he will ask me the project, the way I upload it into a specific project, that project will define the pixels over here. Is it pixels or it is SP, it is DP, or is something like that. So I hope this concept is pretty clear. Great. Going forward, any question guys so far? Let me know if any questions. So we are towards the other section. Let's just move forward. So yeah, yes, definitely, it's all for you guys. So let's go ahead and talk about assets handover, right? So this is something that we need to worry about, because let's say design is done, communication is done, all these things are done, and one part about your Zeppelin is that version control is done. So if you upload some designs one point in a life, and if you try to go ahead and upload a new design, Zeppelin will tell you that you have refreshed the design last 2 days ago. So if you design something which has an issue and you give it to the developer, and you will like, okay, who would come to know, and you will go and refresh the website and refresh the UI, and developer is like, yeah, I have developed this is not something that I have designed, right? And the developer is like, I have seen on Zeppelin it was there, and you will like, no, let's just see. And then when the developer will see, it's a new design, right? So you can't be like, see, the design is different, because there would be versioning. Version 1 uploaded on this day, version 2 uploaded on that day. So you will get to know that this is uploaded recently, that was uploaded previously. You can click on version 1 and see the very first upload. You can click on version 2 and see of the very newest upload. So that's why Zeppelin is good for versioning control and optimizing your end-to-end handover process. So assets handover, when we talk about assets handover, what are we talking about? We are talking about how do I give the actual images and assets to my developer. So depending on the platform that you are giving, we just saw that the actual units are different. That's pixel, there's SP, there's DP, there's point, there's a lot of things, right? So we're going to discuss one in a simple way. So let's just talk about website. Every time you want to hand over something to your developer for website, make sure that the complete images that you provide are in WebP format only, because PNG and JPEG is going to be huge in size. The moment it's huge in size, it's gonna have some loading and performance issue, which we're gonna discuss in the 5th point over now. So make sure the handover is always in your WebP format. If not possible due to some constraint or some images are not getting converted or you have some conversion issue, then PNG, JPEG is going to be the last option for you, right? Don't ever do that. And all the icons that you provide, which is a solid icon having a single color, what not gradient color, because SVG at a moment will not support gradient color while exporting, so and so forth. They would definitely have some constraint while manipulating when you put it to the developer's hand. So that's why for all your images, make sure WebP is your first preference, second is your PNG, third is your JPEG, and for all the icons which has a solid single color has to be your SVG format. So far any question guys, any difficulties? But it's a standard pixel that is used for Android, right? Like just like density pixel is a standard pixel in Android ISO, just like PT stands for your point. So there is DP, there is DIP, there is density intensity pixel, there is SP. So there are so many terminologies that you can help yourself with Google. So do go ahead and check out pixel, check out REM, check out EM. So there are many units that we use across all our digital ecosystem, and that's what I said. You don't have to memorize anything else. You don't have to put anything on your community load. No one will ask you ever the definition of SP or DP. No one will ever tell you, because at the end of the day, you're working in pixels on Figma. So pixel is something that you need to know about. And going forward, there's a concept around it with this REM. If possible, we'll discuss at the end of the session also. So let's go ahead and discuss about Android over here. So while you're trying to design and give your assets to the Android, all your images can be in PNG, but making sure that while you go ahead and talk about PNG when you upload, there is a specific differentiated over here that you need to make sure that all the images supports all the sizes, right? Actual sizes. Now what the sizes means, actually, let's say for example, if I go ahead and talk about a font which is a scalable pixel or a standard pixel, so let's go ahead and I create an image over here, and let's just create something like this. So now for website we have a responsive product, right? So we can go from multiple screen sizes. So I can give an HD image which can over the period of time can be reduced from multiple sizes. But in terms of Android and iOS, so you need to make sure that all the things that you do in a vector format has to be converted properly. So if I'm exporting this image, I will have to export in 1x format, I'll have to export in 2x format, I'll have to export in 3x format, and also SVG for a safer space. So that is how you go ahead, and once you click on this, once you export, this is something that you're gonna get optimized for bitmap images. There is 1x, 2x, and 3x. Because if you go ahead and see, if there's too complication for you to understand 1x, 2x, and 3x, what you can also do is always go ahead and have a 1024, and you can export this image and go to Google and search for icon creation, asset creation for Android or iOS. So let's just go ahead and quickly do it. So there are multiple websites that they does it. Asset creation for Android app. So if you go ahead and browse some websites, see graphic building asset, you just need to give an HD image to them and they will give you all the sizes that are possible, right? So let's just go ahead and try to observe over here. So yeah, there are multiple options over here. You can go ahead and definitely explore few, because there are multiple sizes that is required, right? And in order to understand the sizes, you don't have to memorize that this icon is going to use for a splash screen, this icon is going to for a 13-inch device, this icon is going to for a 14-inch device. So rather than doing that, make sure that you put it in a way of x1, x2, and x3. Now x1s are nothing but a multiple. If I say this is 1px or 1x, the second image would be 2 times the height and width of it. So if I say that is 3x, it's going to be 3 times the height and the pixels. So if I have 1 pixel as an icon, if I say 2x, so I'm going to multiply 2 by 1, so it's going to be 2px. If I say 3x, I'm going to multiply 1 by 3, it's going to be 3x. So the size is exponentially increasing, and there is something called drawable images, right? Like there's a complete list of XXXI, XXXIP, DFXCL. So there are multiple images that we use in Android, and there are known as the drawable images. So you don't have to memorize everything. There are tools to do it. There's everything to do it. So going forward, let's just talk about iOS app. No, there is not. But when you export it to Zeppelin converts and compresses. That's why if you see over here, one of the option SP stands for. Let me quickly show. Yeah, if you saw over there, I've seen some images over here. Just give me a minute. So if you see, there is also a WebP format over here. If you see over here, right? So that's what your Zeppelin will do, but Figma will not do. So it stands for scalable pixels. Just close it quickly. Forward. Do keep on posting, guys, if you have any other questions. I'm going to move quickly. Then for iOS, we don't use as such as an SVG for your iOS a couple of times. We use PNG, sometimes we use SVG. Now depending on the asset type you decide, but iOS is the only platform where PDF can also be taken as an asset, because PDF at the end of the day has a vector format. So make sure that everything that you give in your iOS app has to be a vector format. Try to give, if you're giving PNG, do it in 1, 2, and 3x also. But the best solution to give your images would be in format of a, say, non-vector images would be in a format of a PDF. Okay, so going forward, that is the handover for you. Quick revision. For web, you can put something called WebP for the highest priority, your PNG second, your JPEG third, and then going forward all the other things. SVG for your solid icons. Android, you can go ahead with your PNGs 1x, 2x, 3x, and SVG also. For iOS, make sure all the scalable images are either in PNG or PDF. So that was all about step number 4. Now we're going to talk about design assets optimization. Option to explore. Welcome, Pooja. So we're going to talk about design asset optimization, and this is going to be a huge concept. It would be a smaller thing to go ahead about, but it's going to be a huge concept because there is something called as a lighthouse score. Let me show you something. Lighthouse score. So if you design or develop your product, you will have to make sure that your lighthouse score, say for example, I'm gonna put it as score. So lighthouse score. So this is something called as your lighthouse score. If you see, so over here, if you go ahead and see something like this, the performance is slow, the progress is slow, accessibility is low. It's blurred right now, but you can definitely go back and Google it out for your references. So reason for this performance most of the time is that your assets are very huge in size. So every time you go and try to optimize your product, you have to make sure that your sizes of the product is very optimized, very low in size. And how we are gonna do that? For example, there is something called first paint, first conceptual paint. So first paint means the moment you opens a website, the amount of time that it takes for the first web page to load on your mobile or so, that is known as the first content paint fill. So that first paint is going to be the actual website that we load, and the amount of time that it takes for you to load that website is going to be very dependent on the number of assets that you give going forward, right? So I'm gonna quickly see. Cool. Can you put larger questions into the Q&A section? We have a 30 minutes call out. If you have major conceptual issues, let me know right now to understand the concept. If you have a larger issues, just put it into Q&A session. And we have huge 30 minutes for it. We're gonna just sit and ask all the questions. So design asset optimization. So the major concept over here is that make sure that you use right format for right platform. You use right size for the right platform, and make sure that the overall complexity is reduced by the size of the assets that you're given. So going forward, make sure that all the icons that you use on website has to be SVG. And don't give PNG images for your icon. Let it be SVG. Going forward, WebP for your images, because PNG as compared to WebP is going to be huge. Now WebP is a lossless compression. Like every time you want to talk about image compression techniques, there's a lossless and a lossy technique. So lossless compression will make sure that it will compress to a certain extent, but the quality of the image would not be discarded, or it won't be go down on the resolution. So that's why WebP going forward. SVG animation over GIF and video, yes please. Every time you want to do some animation on video on your website, don't put GIF and web videos for MP3 or MP4. For example, MP4 as a video or a MOV as a video is huge in size. The loading and the performance of the website will go upside down. It will totally go for a toss. So that's why make sure SVG animation is a key to do it. You can readily find it out, or you can make in your own tool and then give it to the developer, or you can communicate that this is the SVG path that I have for individual icons. Just design or develop it directly rather than I am giving you as a video or a GIF. GIF definitely, because GIF will have an HD size or a smaller size. It will just go off the record or bounce because of you are using on a larger devices also. So your GIF will get stretched out and you will start becoming blurry. And your video definitely has a size constraint, so never go for it. Going forward, Lotte or JSON animation over GIF and video for app. Every time you want to create a confetti blast, you want to create that something is successful, product is making money, you show that all money is falling from top to bottom. So all the micro interaction and motion designing has to be given in a JSON format. Now, JSON is nothing but a JavaScript annotation that we use for developer. So let's say, for example, if you have a video of 5 MB, it's a normal vector design that you have done in After Effects or so. So if you design the entire thing in After Effects in a digital format or vector format, if you export it, the video is going to be 5 MB, 6 MB or 10 MB. The actual standard optimized size of the app is only 3 to 5 MB, right? Nobody is going to download 50 MB or 60 MB app unless and until it's a game or so. For a normal utility app, you can see there's a light version for Flipkart, there's a light version for Uber, there's a light version for Ola. Why do we do light version? Because we make sure that the performance is not impacted. And if you say my app is of 2 MB size but my video is of 10 MB size, that would not work. So that's why Lotte animation is your key. You go to After Effects, you do all your UI, UX, you do all your animation, then you download a plugin called Body Moving. So Body Moving is a plugin by Lotte Animation. Now Lotte Animation itself is by Airbnb. Airbnb, we all know about the product, we all know about the website, we all know about the design team. If not, go ahead and search for it. So the Lotte, the Airbnb people found out that uploading a video is a very pain for the developer. The size increases, they design something called a framework called Lotte Animation, and there is a plugin called Body Moving. So every animation that you do in SVG in your After Effects can be quickly moved down to something called a Lotte Animation. So let me see if we have any blockers right now. Yeah, quickly Sagar. So Lighthouse is basically how optimized your product is. For example, you make a website. For you to become a user experience or customer first website, Google will point out some important points on your website if your overall performance score is not about 80 to 85 or standard of 75 to 80, your website is going to be marked as low performing website, and you will go down in search engine optimization. So how do we do that? We make sure that the best practices is used, accessibility use PW, which is web progressive application that we have used for website, and larger chunks comes in terms of performance from your assets. You don't have to give an image of 5 MB, 6 MB, because that is going to have a lot of time in loading. And when we talk about first contentful paint, that is the amount of time when you open a website to the time when actual first screens comes on your screen, right? So if that takes more than 2 to 3 seconds or so, people will directly just close the website and go back to some other product sites. So that's why you need to make sure that it comes in a very slow point. Matrices explanation. What matrices you want to know, Bobby? Can you put down into the Q&A session with very larger context so that we can talk about it? So going forward, yeah, contentful, then speed of the index, then is a time for interaction. So everything has to take with respect to the performance issue, like how soon the website is loading, how soon can I click on the very first button, how soon can I see the very first image, how soon can I do my first transition on the website. So these are the matrices. So all you need to worry about as a designer is that you don't contribute in the performance part by reducing the performance by giving huge images. Everything else developer has to take care of it, that the API call is very fast. You don't have to put 7 to 8 seconds for an API call. 100 milliseconds is more than enough for the API call. If it is not, you need to make sure the developer will understand that that indexing of the API and the content is not done properly, and we don't have to care about what indexing is all about, what API is all about. We need to make sure that, buddy, I'm opening a website, it has to come quickly within 3 milliseconds, 3 seconds or so. I'm not gonna wait for 4 to 5 seconds for you to come, right? So as a designer, you don't have to worry about anything, but you have to worry about performance. Make sure that everything, the assets that we provide to the developer is optimized. Sure. Right. How do we know about Lighthouse Code? That is nothing that you have to do about it. There's a website, there's a plugin, Lighthouse by Chrome. You can go back to over here and install that plugin. And also, if you go ahead and visit any website, you can go ahead and click over here and inspect element. And while you go over here, you can just try to study. And over here, the Lighthouse coding is everything given over here. Let me quickly see for it. So in this tool, there is a section where you have all the Lighthouse coding if you open a website. So here's a Lighthouse code for anything. So once you render a website, right now we don't have it. Let me quickly render any random website. So if you go ahead and create a report, so it will try to analyze your entire website. You can do it for website, you can do it for desktop, you can select performance, you can select everything else. So this is something that is getting very technical. I'm not sure how many of you will digest this part. Awesome. Cool. So right now it's loading the complete thing. So meanwhile we'll go forward, and while we have the Q&A session, we'll come back to it. It takes something around that, like 45 seconds or so. So it's loading. It's not my website, it's a Bloomberg website that is used for content management. So I just sell all my content over here. So yeah. So let me quickly see. So they are also throttling. Now throttling is basically making sure that loading the product in the lowest network possible, highest network possible. So now it's loading the entire website, and it's generating the images over here. So far, I see there are so many development enthusiast people. So the performance is 45, the accessibility is this. So this is a bad, it's not a PWA because like Gumroad does not support that. Then there are so many errors over here. So developer will go ahead and try to do these things over here. We don't have to do anything, but we would have to say that, going forward, tell us what are the sizes of the product. So if you see front content painful, so first of all, the very first print came over here in 2 seconds. So for 2 seconds, everything was just loading. So the moment Google just went ahead and tried to put the sprint, it took 2 seconds. Then the largest contentful paint, so the largest thing was over here, it took 2.8 seconds. Then if you see over here, there are some other assets and the images that we load over here. And they will show that your CSS is not properly optimized, your other things are not optimized, and the developer will look into it. The only contribution that you can do as a designer is that make sure that every assets that you do is properly done. Then there is also a website by Google where you actually check the page score, right? How fast your page is for. Like if you go ahead and Google page score, search for it, and then they'll let you know how mobile friendly your product is. Then they will give you all the assets and the sizes and the side of the image, right? So let's go ahead ahead and talk about this. So that was all I have for you guys for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this session. I hope I was able to deliver some insightful talks to you, which will eventually help you become a better UX UI designer going forward. So I'm gonna quickly stop sharing my screen right now. So yeah, it's a Q&A time. Fifth, what do you feel about the session, man? Hear it from you first.
Yeah, I think this was a very detailed session, and helped everyone. I think personally, on a personal level as well. Certain things that I didn't know of, certain things that many of us who have joined here, I think they didn't know about it. So I think thanks a lot for you to get all the nitty-gritties of it and help us understand how it works out in real life. So and that also brings me to a question this is more of a personal level question. What is that happened throughout your journey and your career that made you think that okay, moving forward I'm really going to help everyone who has been facing this, will be facing this.
Right. That's a very personal question. I want to take a moment to answer that. What happened was the moment I identified that creative field is something that I want to kickstart my career into, because I was a developer, there were a couple of reasons. One of it was that why do I always need to wait for the designers to give me the design and then develop for it? Why can't I be do everything as such? And I also used to do some Photoshop. So there were a couple of other reasons that I inclined toward UX. But back in 2014 and 15, the resources were zero. Nobody else there were no mentorship classes, there were no ProApp, there were no person who was taking workshops like this. So what happened, I used to message a lot of people on LinkedIn. I would say, hey, can you help me understand the design process? Can you help me do this? Can you help me do that? So I go to the Twitter, and they were you just take a name of any big person in design domain right now, and I can share my screen and show you my Twitter chat with him.